To this headline story for you now, the CEO must resign. This will be Numsa's call as it pickets outside the Comair offices this morning. The company, which operates Kulula and British Airways, has had its flights suspended since the weekend after the Aviation Authority revoked its license over safety concerns. Our business reporter, Kopano Gumbi, joins us now for more in studio. Before you get going to cover that story, Kopano, good morning. What do we know so far about the status of Comair? It's grounded indefinitely. What's been happening in the interim?
Well, what we know so far, Michelle, is that Comair are working around the clock to try and resolve these issues. But as Numsa very rightly pointed out, that they have been very aware that they have these technical problems for some time now, and that is what led to the SACAA eventually suspending them. And it's not just Numsa. In fact, we've spoken to several aviation experts who tell us the exact same thing, that this entire situation could have been avoided. And so we wait to see how they resolve it and how quickly they can resolve it. But indefinite is worrying for the business and the employees.
Certainly, and these are employees who have been through a lot over the past couple of years of the pandemic. There was a stage where employees had taken a salary cut. They've been affected incredibly over the past 2 years, and now it continues.
Absolutely. Comair was in business rescue and still is in business rescue. 2 years of this process, similar to what we've seen at SACAA, similar to what we've seen at Mango Airlines. So it really begs the question about whether the South African, the domestic airline industry can survive going forward, because the margins are so tight. We know petrol prices going up means the fuel demand on the airline is extremely cumbersome, and as well as the reduced number of flights, people flying less because it's so expensive to get an airline ticket. We really are worried about how the airline is going to continue going forward. Comair has about 2,000 employees, and many of those jobs are already at risk because of the business rescue process. So now, with this indefinite grounding and the money they're losing through this process, we wonder if that number will increase as we see going forward.
Yeah, because being grounded means you are, every single day that you're grounded, losing money.
Absolutely. And the flights are not moving, but your costs keep running. There are, unfortunately, some concerns around that. AXA told us yesterday that the planes that are parked at the airport, there's a charge on that, like our cars would be charged at the airport. So there's a parking fee, there's ongoing maintenance and all sorts of fees that we know continue despite the fact that they're not in the air.
Any response from Comair CEO Glenn Osmond? Because the calls from Numsa for his resignation are not new. They sort of reiterated those calls yesterday. Today, it's taking the form of a physical picket.
Absolutely, and it's not likely that Comair are going to respond at this moment as they're trying to just get through the process of getting their license back. Glenn Osmond saying they're working around the clock, they're doing everything that they can. He's new in this position as well. He was only recently appointed about 2020. He came in as the CEO of Comair. So perhaps it's one of those situations of we just need to get over this hurdle first. Let's get flying again, and then we can talk about management changes, restructures, and the board will definitely have something to say about it.
Yeah. In the meantime, South Africans are paying exorbitant prices for local flights.
Unfortunately, this is the nature of competition and capitalism. We have to be quite frank about that. Where there is a demand and very little supply, we are bound to see prices increase. We saw it, in fact, last year or the year before when Mango had the similar situation of grounding. Flights were going around 3-4 times the ordinary price on the few airlines that are still operational. And we've heard from the airline CEOs also saying they're trying their best not to make it unreasonable, but unfortunately, demand determines the price.
The other issue, Kopano, insofar as costs skyrocketing for Comair, is that people have booked flights, haven't they? They've booked flights in advance. They now know that those flights can't go ahead. And for them to be able, for consumers to be able to book alternative flights on other airlines, they need refunds from Comair.
That is the that's a very valid point, Michelle, and a clear concern for consumers. But unfortunately, when we buy flights, we assume a certain amount of risk. And that is one of those T's and C's that's sitting at the bottom of your ticket to say you may or may not be entitled to a refund depending on the circumstances of the flight being delayed or postponed. And so you'd find Comair saying they're not in a financial position to give out the refund, and instead would ask consumers to please hold on to those tickets almost as a voucher and recoup it at a later date, because they can't afford to part with hundreds of millions in flight tickets.
I can't imagine the consumers are happy with that. Kopano Gumbi, thank you so much for that update. That picket by Numsa as its calls intensify for Comair CEO to resign. That's taking place this morning.